nobody is more to blame for the rise of the left in Australia than the Liberal Party of Australia, period. Right?
Really?
The failure of them to produce any kind of viable opposition, statements, education, anything, and to run away from anybody who's attempting to do that and not support people on the centre-right who are actually trying to do that is the number one problem I think that this country is facing. We have a crisis of politics because we don't have two sides to our political environment. And people say to me, oh, they lament the polarisation of American politics. Well, I'd rather have two polarised sides than have the uniparty nonsense that we've got going on in Australia right now, because it's killing us.
Yeah, that's
it is
the
killing us
difference
slowly.
between the U.S. and Australia, is that in the U.S., the uniparty duopoly has been broken. You had all the neoconservatives jump ship and join Kamala Harris. You had Miss Piggy, Liz Cheney go over to the Democrat Party. A lot of the neoconservatives, all the deep state actors, the ex-CIA chiefs, the generals, go over to the Democrat Party, and you actually truly have a populist option for once in the U.S. And people chose it. They saw past $1 billion of propaganda, all the celebrities, all the mainstream media, all piled on one side, and they said no.
And traditionally, left populists, people like Bernie Sanders,
has come, or some of them came over to the Republican side.
He himself he's an independent anyway, right? There was no room for him in the Democrats. Yeah. He should join Trump.
Well, a lot of his supporters have.
Yeah, exactly.
If you look at people like Tim Pool and a number of the other people who liked Bernie Sanders, they have jumped ship.
But he's a raving lunatic, neo-Marxist, so no thanks. Yeah, but I mean, he's a far left nut job.
No, you're right. He is a lunatic.
Here's let's say I'm going to defend the things I don't believe in, right? If you look at Bernie Sanders and even Elizabeth Warren, I can't even believe I'm doing this. Am I doing this in front of an audience?
You're doing this.
If you have a look at some of their complaints about private equity, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Those are legitimate complaints.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Those concerns are not going to be addressed by the Democrats.
No.
They're more likely to be addressed by the Republicans.
Correct.
What I'm suggesting
I get it.
is not that those sorts of people should be in charge of the party. What I'm suggesting is that we should be a bit more encompassing on the right, where we can actually say what our real values are and work towards those, which means that we might have a few wingnuts on our side, but they're our wingnuts, right? They're people that we say, okay, we agree with you on this stuff, this other stuff we're not going with, right? We're not going with full socialism, we're not going with all that sort of stuff, but containing the excesses of big corporations, especially private equity, we're right there.
Well, the populist left and the populist right agree on one thing, and that is this opposition to this nexus that we were talking about before between big business and big government.
Yep.
Although the populist left still like their big government, they do hate big business, and they will align with us to fight that control and that bureaucratisation.
Yeah,
I don't just talk about money for a minute.
I think they want the money.
And I want to bring it back to Australia and talk about the bucks, because the cleverest thing that ever happened in this country in terms of what the left did was they got control of all the social institutions, right? They controlled and infiltrated. We've talked about this before, mate. They controlled and infiltrated the churches. They controlled and infiltrated education, academia first, now high schools, now primary schools.
Yeah.
They controlled and infiltrated the media. So we've got this, very left-wing ABC. We've got corporate media. Nine Network is extremely left-wing now and pushing left. Their radio station, they've bought the radio stations that were conservative, 2GB, 3AW, 4BC. They're all pushing left now, or more left than away from the right. We've got the Sydney Morning Herald and Age are under 9, so that's all that. 10 is a very left-wing network. That's CBS, owned by Paramount and CBS.
Well, that's because they almost broke, didn't they, Channel 10?
Well, they're in a lot of trouble. But the only thing that the left hadn't tackled and hadn't got control of was capital, money. And they did it under Paul Keating by establishing the superannuation funds, the industry superannuation funds specifically. So we've got $4 trillion of capital under management, assets under management, sitting with the superannuation funds in Australia. That is per capita, that is an enormous amount of money. And I think we heard people in Parliament applauding that the other day, how wonderful it is that Australia's got all this pension money and we can invest that. That's great. Okay, fantastic. However, half of that money, $2 trillion, sits with industry super funds. So super funds or the public sector unions, the public sector funds, which are controlled by the left. If you look at the industry super funds, they're all union connected. They're all connected to Labor Party in some way. They've got Labor Party people on the ex-Labor Party people on the boards. They have a couple of Liberals thrown in to make it look slightly balanced. You know, they're always happy to take a board position. Yeah, Liberals with the small L, very small L. And that's the game. The game is capital. And that is a big factor in terms, I mean, you could forget the asset management, the American asset management firms. This is a much bigger problem for Australia because that much capital in the hands of the left being directed into corporations to make those corporations left and to grow those bureaucracies and to grow the nexus with government, keep government big and just keep milking and living off tradies, small businesses, working Australians. That's the divide in this country right now. It's between the working people and the productive people and the people who suck on the teat of these bureaucracies and bludge off the rest of us. And I am sick of it. And that is what a new party has got to tap into. But I just don't know how that can happen.
And that ties into our next topic,
Sorry, if I just want
you wanted to go into finance, right?
It's a feedback loop. It's a disgusting feedback loop. Because if somebody says to me, what should I do to become in charge of multi-billion or tens of billions or hundreds of billions of dollars worth of funds in Australia, don't bother studying finance, mate. Go do industrial relations and go get a job for a union. Now, I cannot imagine any reason why being a union boss or a politician qualifies you to make investment decisions.
It doesn't.
But I'm going to say something from my old broking days when I was a young whippersnapper and quite brazen and going out there with not the experience I needed. But I would say to people that they should take more control. And I would say to them to set themselves up with their self-managed super funds. And what I would say to them, I'm going to say this to the camera as well. Most of us are told that the biggest investment we'll ever make, the biggest purchase we'll ever make, is our family home. And for most Australians and most Americans, that will be true. Equally as big or similarly as big for most Australians is going to be their superannuation fund. This is supposed to be your life savings that takes you from retirement through to the time that you die. So it should be something that's pretty important to you. So if you're watching this show, I have a question for you if you have a superannuation fund. Somebody is managing your life savings on your behalf. What is that person's name?
Wayne Swan.
No, the person who's in charge of your actual superannuation fund, yours personally.
Sorry.
What is that person's name? If you don't know that person's name, there's a problem. If you don't know what that person is doing, what that person's life ambitions are, who that person is, or anything about them and their family, there's a problem, and maybe you should consider taking your super out and managing it yourself or putting it under the control of professionals that you know and that you pick.
This leads into our next topic. A lot of people have been looking at the US win and they're like, this is great. Make America great again. I'm feeling their love. Nature is correcting. We're seeing these phenomenal picks from Trump's administration. Kennedy, make America healthy again. Tulsi Gabbard, and you know, the Department of Government Efficiency. Awesome. This is really good. Trump's revolutionizing America. That surely means that Peter Dutton's going to win the next election in March or May next year. And to that, I would reply this article from John Roscombe from the Institute for Public Affairs, who do great work, Why the Libs Can't Do a Trump. And this leads into the myriad of problems that Damien and the rest of the panel have alluded to with regards to the Australian fight. And this is the crux of it. He said this is essentially why. Authenticity. The Liberals and Peter Dutton, they lack authenticity. It's not that they don't have it. We've seen Peter Dutton demonstrate authenticity in going after the media, like during the Voice referendum, but it is not his prime programming, and he's going after more of a moderate sort of approach, and it's going to fail. It's going to fail, and it doesn't bring me any pleasure in saying that, but it is going to fail. Where do you guys see this country going with regards to another 3 years of Albo, if we assume that for now?
My biggest concern, given the silence, I'll go first. My biggest concern is that they'll increase their. From what I understand here, this misinformation bill is going to die by one vote. My biggest concern is that there's a potential that they could increase the seats in the parliament or increase the Senate, their Senate positions, which gives them more power. Pauline Hanson's cartoons does a very good job of this when they say, this is not what 30% of Australians voted for. I mean, what if they get 32%? Whatever the numbers are, I'm not sure exactly what the numbers are before the misinformation people come after me. I'm deeply concerned about that. But I will say this, if we could find somebody from outside of politics, maybe we would have a fighting chance. I think that they would get a lot of success if they tried to come in without going through the normal political channels. If the United States can produce a Donald Trump and the UK can produce a Nigel Farage, I believe in Australia we can produce somebody. Don't look at me. We can produce somebody, and we've got a lot of people that are. What we need, I think, is that eccentric, larrikin kind of Aussie, right? That bloke that jumps up and says, right, this is what we're doing. Because I think Australians will gravitate towards that person much more easily than they will some overeducated inner city moron. Or the real problem with diversity in our politics is you've got a bunch of lawyers in there.
There's no diversity in our politics.
Outside of law
And it doesn't-
is actually sitting in our politics.
And it doesn't seem like it'll be anyone who comes up from the rank and file of the party, because that's not a crop of people who are values driven. So you look at the U.S. Republican Party win, right? You have Donald Trump, RFK Jr., Vivek Ramaswamy. You have Elon Musk. This is sort of the Avengers. Tulsi Gabbard. Most of these people start out already rich and on the outside. They can't be bought. Right, and so they. But on the other hand, you have the Senate and the House. A lot of that, the swamp monsters are still in charge. You know, the Senate Majority Leader is a swamp monster, and so the real fight now in the U.S. is that, okay, yes, the populists have won the White House, but the House and Senate, are they going to still be bought out by the powers that have been controlling them for a long time, or will Trump bring them along? Here in Australia, unfortunately, it seems like we're lost in the wilderness. We do not have a values-driven, core to bring us away from the direction that we've been going.
We've got the 5 Cs, as you said before,
Yes,
and the worst
right.
one is the career politicians. And the Liberal Party is
That's it.
absolutely full
That
of
is
these
it.
young kids that come straight out of
Yep.
uni with their young Liberal hat on, and they bounce into the Liberal Party, and then they get a
values
party
and ready
job,
to
and
be
then they do
sold out.
something else, and they hobble around for years and years, and they finally get given a little council ward, and then they get a little state seat, and then they get a little... The party is full of these kids, and
Being
they're all the same.
groomed
They're
by
all
the
one
system.
type of people. And we need diversity of opinion, diversity of background. And I don't know how we fix this problem, because the Westminster system is not a great start, because you can't have ministers that are coming from outside Parliament. You can hire your director generals, your departmental heads, who really are the undergovernment. They're the people who really run Australia anyway. So you can actually hire your Elon Musk and stuff into that. But they don't, for some reason. Liberal parties never bring in good business people or outsiders. They always promote government people to these government positions, which baffles me. But anyway, we need a revolutionary...
Because we don't want them, that's why.
Sorry, mate?
Because we don't want them. I left Australia for this specific reason, right? People always complain that I left Australia because of taxes. That's not the reason I left Australia. I left Australia because I don't want to have to put up with all the paperwork and all the crap.
Yeah.
Right? Because I can go to so many other places in the world where I can just operate, right, and be left alone.
Well, I don't want to start my business. I had a business in Hong Kong. I'm not starting it here. Go jump in the lake. No way in the world. Am I
That's
going to
why-
hire any,
And
anybody?
that's why you don't see the real entrepreneurial people in this country actually taking these sorts of roles in government departments. Because what they're going to do is they're going to say, we need to make these departments smaller, and we need to make these departments more efficient so that it's more conducive to the type of environment that would encourage businesses to actually exist. they're not going to do that because small business owners are just like, oh, to hell with it. It's not worth the fight.
No, that's right. And they're too busy drowning in red tape. And that's part of the game, actually, is to tie small business people and entrepreneurial people and innovative people and motivated people up. But what it does is it destroys your nation. And I think you've hit right now, we are talking about probably the most important issue that our country faces right now. And that is the fact that there is no spirit or drive for excellence or to create or innovate, because the minute a young person goes, I've got a great idea and I want to do this, the next thought is, oh, shoot, I've got to deal with all that red tape. I've got to deal with the government. I've got to deal with those employment laws that just make life hell. I can't even hire and fire the people that I want. If I hire someone and they're crap, I can't get rid of them. You know, why would I want to take on all that? But you know what? I think I'll just go to the beach. And I know so many, it's not just young people, I know so many people my age in their 50s who are like, you know, should be the people starting small businesses now and hiring a handful of young people. And they're not. They're sitting on the beach at Noosa retired because they can't be bothered dealing with the laws and the red tape and the hassles of employing people. And we have the unions to thank for that. Well-meaning in some cases, protectionist in others. But the unions are to blame. We've got too many laws protecting employees and not enough laws protecting employers. And so you just lose your employers. They leave the country. I didn't know you weren't actually still here. I'm leaving next year because I can't cope with this anymore. I certainly would love to grow a business here, but I will keep my business going. I'll just run it from somewhere else because you can now. You know, I'll keep the other side going, hopefully, if we get support for it, which is the other thing, right? I am so sick of having rich people tell me that they complain about the left and they will not support startup initiatives like what Joel's doing here with the I don't know how much support you're getting.
Back at you, mate. No,
I'm getting some from good people, some good people, but we are nowhere near break even as a business, right? Everything I do is voluntary on that show.
You keep looking at me. I haven't brought my checkbook. But
no, sorry, mate. I wasn't looking at you in that sense. I mean, and I wouldn't do that.
No, I'm joking.
I'm just simply, and I'm sure you do support other initiatives, but I'm just talking about, you know, I mean, I know a reasonable number of people who've got a bit of money who complain a lot about the left. And online too. And I've started pushing back, just saying capital needs to step up in this country,
and one of the
like
worst
it does in America.
One of the worst things they could do is throw money at the Liberal Party.
Which is what they keep bloody doing. Or surrogates for the Liberal Party, like a certain organisation.
Which is why we're not putting that money up. That's the thing. That's the reason why. I mean, I've got 800,000 members of the Pacific Rim Chamber of Commerce. The top 1,000 of those are people that I know personally, those families. Most of the top 1,000 will have net worths of more than 30 million US. We've got a fund of around 20 billion that could be invested in any Pacific Rim country. My favourite of which is the country that I was born in, here in Australia. There's no way I could get anything through. And I also couldn't justify it to them. This is the big problem.
Yep.
See, for me personally, all I wanted to do was to run a financial service, like a fund, right? Basically a managed fund. That's all I wanted to do.
Good luck.
I just could not get licensing. I couldn't get approvals. I just couldn't do it, right? Now, okay, I was pretty brazen trying to achieve that at 23. That was never going to happen. Fair enough, because I was too young and inexperienced. But I could have been mentored in the right direction. The problem was there is no right direction here in Australia. Okay? I get to 27. I get the opportunity to go over to the Middle East. These guys, and I'm trying to raise money for a derivatives trading fund with a very specific type of derivative, and trying to explain that to people in the Middle East that at that time didn't really have much familiarity with the markets. Didn't work out too well, but I did raise some money. Then I get to 35 and somebody says to me, hey, I've got some friends in Switzerland and they want to talk to you. I've been talking to them about you and they want to talk to you. And I said, yeah, I've heard it all before. I was a bit jaded by that point. I've heard it all before. It's all just crap. I'm not going. I'm not going to even pick up the phone and talk to them. So they started ringing my business partners and traders that I trade with back when we were sort of just running our own thing with no clients and just using our own money. And every day for about a month, you know, the people closest to me said, look, maybe you should just pick up the call. I mean, just take a call. They've been calling us, every day. So I picked up the call, and 2 nights later, I'm on a first-class flight with Emirates over to Emirates Airways from Perth to Dubai to Switzerland. In 6 weeks, I was able to get licensed, funded, or commitments for funding, and not funding like 10 million or 20 million, which was a lot of money to me at the time when I got that from the Middle East. I had $1.5 billion committed to me in euros. Then they were talking about US facing, we had to be licensed in another jurisdiction. I had another 1.3 billion committed to me there. All of that happened within a few months. I could fly back to Australia, and then I've got to go and speak to my lawyers and say, am I legally allowed to operate a fund from here? The fund and all the licensing is done over in Liechtenstein, but am I allowed to actually execute the trades from Australia, or could that be deemed as me trading on behalf of a foreign thing? So there's all this sort of complication.
Yeah.
So what did I do? I mean, you know what? The hell with it. I'll leave.
Yeah.
I'll just leave.
So Australia loses the fees.
Exactly.
On how much? How much possible and potential assets under management money? About 6 billion.
In Aussie dollars, yeah.
So 6 billion, if the fees are 2%
Yep.
or 1%,
Yep.
right? That's still a truckload of money that
and I haven't even mentioned what happens in Singapore. Now, then I popped through, I'm on a flight through Hong Kong, and I'm not going to name them, but I ran into a few politicians, on both sides actually. They happened to be both sides of the political aisle. They just happened to be in the lounge at the time. And I'm talking to them, and they said, oh, yeah, you should come back to Australia. I mean, be a little bit patriotic. And I said, patriotic? I'm not even sure if I'm allowed to operate. But even if I am allowed to operate out of my house in Dalkeith in Western Australia, you still wouldn't allow me to take investment funds from Australians because apparently I'm not qualified enough or good enough. So I can only earn this money on operations I have outside. And then you want half? You want to take 45%, or at the time it was 47%, plus the Medicare levy on my income? So basically, you think as a country that you and the government rules that you've set up, that you are as responsible as I am for the success that I've had.
And that's just one industry. That's just the financial sector. That's just the financial business.
But your money would be so well spent.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep.
But this is my real issue. Right?
Making more laws.
If somebody wants to be an actor or a singer or something like that, fair enough that they may go to other countries because the market's bigger. But other people who are business people or something like me, I just want to be a trader. If you're a crypto trader or something like that, you're looking to go overseas because of stupid regulations, and we lose our best and brightest young people for no other reason but because of stupidity in our government.
The biggest communist country on the planet has almost more liberal laws and regulations around the financial industry now than we do, because they realise they need to get the capital coming into the country and flowing into the country. So China's not stupid. And here we are drowning in this red tape. Now that's the finance industry. I don't even want to talk about the housing industry, right? And property and building.
I'll tell you.
Do you know what the corporate rate of tax is in Russia? Let's go prior. I'm not sure what it is now. Prior to the conflict between Russia and Ukraine.
10%.
What the corporate rate of tax is? 13%. Do you know how long it takes to get licensed to run a financial services firm out of Russia? About 3 weeks. But you know what?
I was going to say 3.5 minutes.
It only takes, well, it depends how much money you've got to start off with. But you know what? You can get licensed out of New Zealand quicker than you can get licensed out of here.
Good God.
I don't want to rant.
People's Communist Republic of New Zealand.
I don't want to rant and rave too much more about the financial
Speaking
industry in this country. I'll just say one last thing if I can. If you have a look and see that the Australian Stock Exchange had a legitimate takeover bid from the Singapore Stock Exchange that was blocked by, I think it was Costello, but it might have been somebody else, that was blocked as not being in the national interest. The reality of the situation was the Singapore Stock Exchange has such high revenue and such high assets that they had enough money to buy the ASX and run it more efficiently than we could run it here. And that was
And they're not a
15
huge exchange. The Singapore Stock Exchange has its own problem.
Right. So they wanted to do that 15, 20 years ago. That's when they wanted to do that. If there's not a problem in Australia on finance, I mean, clearly there is. Look at all the other industries.
Speaking of Russia, can we pivot to the not fiddling while Rome burns and get away from finance into World War III? What do you think?
Yeah, no, in a bit, the reason I wanted to ask that topic about where you guys seeing the next three years, and it sounds like we're moving some of your businesses overseas, if not already.
I'm moving myself overseas.
Moving yourself overseas.
You'll have to get me in on Zoom.
That's right. No, I don't blame you. The reason I ask is, look, I don't know business. I know construction. I know approvals, DAs, and all of that. And I worked in the industry and saw it real time with regards to how much does it cost to build a small to medium construction project. You know, at least 10 stories, for example. And I saw in real time in 2020 the prices change. They were already expensive from government regulation and in climate policies, arborist reports. Aboriginal. If you want to tender for a government project for construction, like 5% or something has to be Aboriginal owned companies and all this. Just a lot of red tape. And then to make matters worse, COVID comes along. Our industry is already decimated with regards to how we supply our basic electricals in the ceilings, in the walls. Anything to do with energy makes everything expensive.
Yep.
We used to have the second cheapest energy in the world. Now it's one of the most expensive per kilowatt or something. And I look at what's going on in construction, and I'm like, mate, no wonder there's a housing crisis. You don't have enough builders. You've got too much regulation. The amalgamations of the councils was one of the worst things you ever did. And we're seeing the perfect storm because we've got mass immigration. Like every year, we've got like 1 million people. It's the highest per capita. 30% of the country are immigrants. 53% are either immigrants or the children of immigrants. There's too many people coming in. It's ruining the deal, and people aren't even buying into our values. Now, look, That's what I'll say on that topic. But one thing I definitely know about 100% is where these elections are going. And you heard it here first, folks. Remember the date.